but it's now my pleasure to introduce the next President of the United States, the greatest hope we have for freedom, Congressman Ron Paul.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. What a nice welcome. Who knows, this might even be a record crowd. This is really fantastic. Thank you. You know, it sounds like the revolution has arrived to Illinois. I'm delighted to be here with you. You know, we talk a lot about restoring America, and when we restore the Republic, there'll be one way you'll know. The students will once again be able to choose their own mascots. I want to thank Congressman Johnson for that very nice introduction. Tim is a very good friend. He's a close ally, and it would be sure a shame if you don't send him back to Washington next go around. So I sure hope you'll see him back. Tim. But it is a delight to be here, and there truly is a revolution going on. It's a intellectual revolution, but it's being translated into political action, and you can sense it here. The people in this country are tired of what they have, and for some reason, the young people have caught on. They're not going to be hoodwinked. They know they need some changing. But it shouldn't be all that complicated, because if anybody cares about their liberty, and that should be every single one of us, There is a truism: the bigger the government is, the less liberty you have. The government is too big, our liberty is too minimal, and that is the reason the solution is shrink the size of government and give you your liberty back. You know, big government grows all the time because of good intentions. We're going to produce peace and prosperity throughout the world. We're going to tell people how to live so they're saintly, and we're going to have a perfect economy that's going to give equality to everybody. The whole problem with that is government totally fails in all three areas, and only the people can take care of themselves. But the government does have a responsibility. It should be very limited, though. And the founders were very unhappy with the king. They had a little revolution, wrote a little document called the Constitution. And even at that time, they worried a bit, believing that if the people didn't maintain a real effort to protect those liberties, the Constitution wouldn't protect them. I think what has happened in the last 100 years, there's been a disintegration of the enthusiasm for personal liberty. It has to be renewed, has to be restored, and we're in the process of right now. The document, the Constitution, dealt with all areas. The government was there to protect our liberties. It was there to provide a sound currency. Believe that? And also it was the Constitution was very explicit on when we should go to war. war, and it would only be done with a declaration. How's that? Hope it works now. The wars should be fought only under declaration. They were sick and tired of the king deciding when to go to war and sending the bills to the people. Well, guess what? We're back at square one. The king, our executive branch, is deciding on the wars, and they're dumping on the people all the disadvantages and all the expense. That has to change, which means the foreign policy has to change. The wars have to end, and we need to bring our troops home. What is even a greater insult of our presidents right now going to war without permission of the Congress, they actually say they get permission from the United Nations. Where did they get that idea? They claim that they can get authority and they would inform the Congress. This is not to be. This is not the way it was supposed to be, and this is the reason since World War II we've had all these wars, not one declared, not one war won. Think of how many trillions of dollars have been wasted in these very last 10 years. In those last 10 years, $4 trillion added to our debt for foreign expenditures. This country would be a lot wealthier if that $4 trillion had been spent here at home and not overseas. A lot of people believe, the neoconservatives believe that we have to go overseas because we're an exceptional nation and we have to spread our goodness. Spread our goodness with a bunch of bombs and killing people? That doesn't work. So the exceptionalism is something to think about because I believe America has been an exceptional nation. We have had maximum amount of freedom at one time. We've had great prosperity. We had sound money. We had property rights. We had contract rights. And yet today, those things aren't with us, and yet we are now more aggressive overseas than ever before, so-called spreading our goodness. But the whole thing is, if we want to spread our goodness, why don't we set an example for the world? If we have maximum amount of freedom and we have a sound currency, great prosperity, protection of civil liberties, minding our own business and not invading countries and not killing people around the world, maybe somebody would say, you know, America is a great place. That's played America. That is true. We're going to try another one. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let's see how this works now. And if we do not do this, this country will deteriorate into much more bankruptcy. And that's where we are. That's why the young people of this country are tired of what they're getting. They're getting the debt, they're getting their wars, and they're losing their personal liberties. Just think, just recently, the federal government was about ready to pass a bill which would Stop Online Piracy Act. Now, it's pretty discouraging at times to shake them up in Washington and change their tune. But when the American people speak out and they speak loud enough, they will hear us. And people like you did speak out. The bills that were promoting that were taken off the docket, and right now they're not going to be passed. Our government has gone in the wrong direction because in a free society, in a true republic, the government should be open. We should know what the government is doing. Your privacy is what the government should protect. But unfortunately, it's the other way around. We have no privacy, and the government becomes more secret every single day. And if we're going to have more openness in government, why don't we start with more openness to find out what the Federal Reserve is doing? When we end the Fed, prosperity will return to this country. That is it. The Federal Reserve's been around 100 years, started in 1913, so they're having an anniversary next year. So why don't we have an anniversary party by repealing the Federal Reserve Act next year? The Federal Reserve is supposed to give us a stable dollar and stable prices. Well, they've lost 98% of the dollar that they inherited in 1913, so they haven't done a very good job. And the inflation, of course, over that period of time has just been horrendous, and it continues today. So the Federal Reserve is the instrument of the special interests, the big banks, the Goldman Sachs of the world. Those are the ones who get the benefit. And the little bit of information we have gotten without a full audit, we found out during the crisis 4 years ago, is that the Federal Reserve churned $15 trillion into the economy. The Congress worked with $1 trillion. That's how big the Federal Reserve is. And they don't want to tell us who they bail out and where. We did find out that half of the bailout money from the Federal Reserve went to foreign banks and foreign governments. And there's plans on the books for all of us to be on hook for this because the Europeans are probably in a little worse shape than we're in. So this is a very, very big issue. And it's the first time in the last 100 years where the Federal Reserve has become an issue in a presidential campaign. The Federal Reserve was based on some real false economic assumptions, but the worst part of the Federal Reserve is it encourages big government. So if you like the entitlement system where there's transfer of wealth, then you have to have a Federal Reserve to monetize the debt because you can't tax and you can't borrow enough money. But also the foreign wars would quit because if you couldn't monetize the debt, interest rates would go up and we wouldn't be able to afford it. So since 1913, just think of all the economic problems, the recessions and depressions and wars that have been fought and financed through inflated currency. So this is the reason we cannot ignore this. It's very, very powerful and the special interest benefit to a large degree. But I'm convinced that there would not be the kind of deficits we had if that would be the case. Now, our economy is in bad shape right now. Our national debt is over $15 trillion. In February of this year, this past February, the national debt went up $200 billion in 1 month. And this is totally unsustainable, and yet nobody is cutting anything. In Washington, they talk about cuts, but they're only talking about teeny little cuts on the proposed increases. They're proposing on the baseline budgeting for our budget to go up that we're obligated to for $10 trillion over the next 10 years. So they're talking about maybe cutting $1 trillion over 10 years. That's $100 billion a year. And the deficit going up $100 to $200 billion every month. So this is the reason if we're serious. The people I know in Washington are not serious. I don't believe the other candidates are serious either. If they were, they would endorse. If they were serious, they'd join me in advocating a $1 trillion cut in the budget. And of course, the first place I would start cutting would be the overseas. That should be the easiest. I don't know why that shouldn't bring us all together. Liberals, conservatives, Democrats, and Republicans, we're broke. We're getting deeper in debt by the minute, and we're wasting this money overseas. It's not doing us any good. and it's time to come home. We should be able to rally the country behind us. But the other candidates on our side, they're not advocating that. They're taking the position and saying that Obama is not doing enough. He needs to fight even more wars. Makes no sense. But that attitude is shifting. I've been talking about the war issue for a long time, as long as I've been in Congress. I remember the first talk I gave on the House floor about Iraq. It was in 1998, about 5 years before they invaded it. But it is this attitude that we're supposed to be the policemen of the world. We're supposed to occupy countries and get involved and go into nation building. That is not in the Constitution. It spends a lot of money, and it doesn't help us in national defense. It actually makes us less defensible, because we don't ever want to equate military spending with defense spending. Military spending sometimes is a strong negative for defense. But because of our foreign policy, just to think of what's happened these last couple weeks, first we have the abuse of corpses by our military, and then people getting shot up, and all the tragedies. But that's even small compared to how much collateral damage there is, and that we have to look at it maybe from their viewpoint. Not too many weeks ago, we had a debate, and I suggested, why don't we consider a foreign policy where we think about the Golden Rule? How would we like to be treated? Of course, the response that night wasn't quite the same as your response. They were a little bit annoyed. Whoever thought you'd get booed for preaching the Golden Rule, And it's not like one religion has monopoly over the Golden Rule. All the great religions, preach the Golden Rule, trying to treat other people as you would be treated. And that's the way individual liberty should be. That's the way economic liberty should be. But certainly overseas, this is the way it should be. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how we would react if somebody sent a drone missile over here to assassinate somebody they didn't like? We would just be a little bit annoyed, I would say. So, but the foreign policy to me is a very, very big issue, and it's the place that we ought to stop. Right now, our images in the Arab countries is very, very negative about, the torture that's been involved, the scenes that have involved, shooting up and burning Korans for who knows what reason. We have become known as a nation of torturers, and the pictures were not good for us. It's very negative. We are now a nation that preaches, that it's the established policy by the president of assassinations of American citizens. This is not in the Constitution. It's not what made America great. And those kind of laws cannot stay on the books. We have secret prisons. We now have a law passed, Congress passed it, gave it to the President. The President signed it on January 1st. The National Defense Authorization Act. Horrible. This enables and gives the President literal power, clear power that he can arrest any American citizen by the military. So there's no more posse comitatus. You don't have to be charged. You don't get a trial. And one senator said, and if they ask for a lawyer, tell them they don't get one. And people say, well, they haven't touched me or my neighbor, but precedent is very important, and to codify these kind of things, very, very dangerous. And I think the American people haven't heard about that. The crowds like this, you have heard about it, and I think that is great that you're aware of it, but we still have a long way to go to repeal it. And quite frankly, I don't see where the other candidates would do a thing about it because they don't even talk about it. But I can guarantee you a few things. If I am to be your president, I will not go to war ever without a declared war outright. And these laws that have become laws because the president wrote an executive order, I am convinced that even though executive orders should not be used to legislate, maybe for a few rare moments they can use them for direction of proper executive function, but if he passed laws, as they have been doing, I believe a constitutional president can use an executive order to repeal those laws. But you know, the whole idea of liberty is under attack at all levels of government. Unfortunately, they want to move up in another level of government and have international government. But this year, in January, there were 40,000 new laws passed, put onto the books. So I'm looking forward to the day when we can get rid of 40,000 laws in 1 month. And I think on top of the list, how about this one? Let's repeal the Patriot Act. But some people worry about that, and they say, well, won't that hinder the TSA on their searches at the airport? I have said, and in a way I believe this sincerely, that if we can look at those photographs of the groping of men, women, and children at the airport and do nothing about it and remain complacent, there's something wrong with us, so we should be outraged. But with the Patriot Act, we've lost a lot of our privacy. I'm convinced it would have never been passed if it had been called Repeal the Fourth Amendment. You know, it wouldn't have been passed. So when we offer the amendment or the bill to repeal it, we'll call it Restore the Fourth Amendment. But, you know, the privacy's been under attack even before the Patriot Act, and there is essentially no privacy. There's no financial privacy, no medical privacy, and there's a lot of reasons for that. We've been too careless. We've allowed the government to do this and our politicians to do this, and we haven't let them know how upsetting it is. But there have been certain things that promoted that. One is the onerous tax code we have that is a reason why they want no financial privacy. So the solution to this is not reforming the tax code, is to get rid of the IRS and the income tax. But there's also been another excuse for the invasion of our privacy and all their surveillance and the breaking into our houses and the operations where the sting operations, they come in and SWAT teams, like 100 or some 200 per day. They're breaking into houses, and guess what? Many times they go into the wrong houses and people die. This is a consequence of an ill-founded war on drugs that I believe ought to end. You know, it's interesting, if you're a conservative and libertarian, you advocate states' rights, they'll say, oh, that sounds terrible. I'm very suspicious of you to argue states' rights. You know, that's pretty old-fashioned. But what about states that pass laws that allow sick people to use marijuana? Why shouldn't those on the other side of the aisle that might call themselves liberals say, oh, under those circumstances, let's have states' rights. Let the states allow people to use marijuana for medical reasons if they want to. But obviously for me, drugs are very dangerous, and but the point is the responsibility. I'm responsible for my life and how to use everything that I put in my body, and I have a responsibility to the children and the grandchildren to teach people. The responsibility falls on us, not the government to be the nanny state. That's really the problem. But the other principle that's violated is this idea that government can protect us from ourselves. And they can't do that. They can't do it. They make things worse. But this is the whole thing. In what we put in our bodies, the government's going to regulate us. But what if they decided that they would regulate us? Don't you think there's some dangerous literature out there, philosophies? Just think how dangerous philosophies kill a lot of people. And there are some pretty weird religions out there, too. But we don't expect the government to come in, even though they may be technically more dangerous than the drugs, but all of a sudden we succumb and say, oh, yes, to the point now where, you know, even if you want to drink raw milk, you can't do it. The federal government might close you down. So it makes no sense at all about the whole idea of responsibility. Besides, on this, we treat alcoholics, you know, as an addiction. Everybody who drinks too much doesn't get put in prison. If they cause violence, they should go to prison. And drugs, but we treat everybody who used drugs. Sometimes individuals have used drugs, caught 3 times, non-violent, never committed a violent act, and could go to prison for life. It makes no sense at all. So what we need to do is also understand that drug addiction is a very serious problem. But guess what? It's much bigger in prescription drugs than it is in illegal drugs. But I think what has happened to us as a country over the last 100 years is we have been very careless. We became very prosperous. We were the freest country. We had great resources, and we did quite well. We had the largest middle class and the richest middle class. That is not true. The middle class is shrinking, and it's not so rich anymore. A characteristic of the destruction of a currency says that the middle class will shrink. You take money and you transfer wealth from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy. That just with the destruction of currency that happens, because whoever gets to spend the money first gets a benefit. The people who get it last, the people, they get the higher prices. But just think how that was compounded with the bailouts. They had already benefited from the financial bubble and the speculation and the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Macs and the Goldman Sachs. They were making bundles. And then the crisis comes and they say, oh, there's going to be a depression. You've got to bail us out. We're too big to fail. And lo and behold, the Fed and Congress, they get bailed out. But who suffered? Those very people that we were supposed to be helping. The Bleeding Heart said, we have to help every poor person have a house, and we're going to give it to them. Guess what? They lost their job, and they lost their houses, and the banks and all are back making a lot of money again, and the unemployment rates is still very, very high. The true unemployment rate in this country is closer to 20%, and that's why the people aren't feeling so good about it. But there's every reason to believe this can be reversed, and we don't have to, suffer for it. A lot of times people talk about, well, we have to sacrifice. Everybody has to sacrifice. But what if I told you that I was going to return your freedom to you and get rid of your income tax and let you keep what you earn and stay out of your life? Provide for a sound currency, protect contract rights, protect your property. all of a sudden we would thrive. Yes, there would be some adjustment. There may be a depression for the people who were ripping us off. That's who deserves the depression. But this change that occurred 100 years ago, of course, it changed with tax policy and monetary policy and foreign policy. But I think what has happened also with the prosperity that we enjoyed, we got more concerned about the material benefits of a free society and forgot how production occurred, how you have to produce to enjoy benefits. So what we ended up doing was we went to the government for the redistribution of wealth, for the privilege, because to get the lobbies up there and get special deals in the contracts, and lo and behold, the free society has disintegrated. And that's where we are today. There's still a lot of wealth around. There's a lot of wealth around, but it's all based on debt. And the debt will have to be liquidated if we want to have our economic growth again. But we... But we have to understand that if we don't do this, things will be much worse. People say, well, no, there will be tough adjustments. But I'll tell you what, doing what we're doing now and continue to do it, it won't happen. The checks will bounce. The dollar will go down. Prices will go up. And they're doing it already. The government, Federal Reserve, tells us, 2% inflation rate. Well, ask somebody who's on retirement benefits, or ask somebody who's going to school, what the price of living is. What about the price of gasoline? No, the inflation rate is very high, and I think it's just starting. So this means that the people in fixed incomes are going to hurt, and the only solution that they have, whether it's the Congress, they spend more money, and the Fed, they print more money. That's how we got into trouble. You cannot solve the problem by doing more of the same dumb things. But the other thing that happened 100 years ago or so is freedom was chopped into pieces. And it still, in many ways, is chopped into pieces because there are some people in Congress they do pretty well. And they might not even call themselves conservatives or libertarians, but they might be pretty good in protecting civil liberties and personal liberties and lifestyles. And they protect the First Amendment. But they hate the economy, economic conditions. They'll say, but we have to do this. We have to give free houses and free medical care, and all of a sudden, it doesn't work so well. But then there's another group who says, we understand economics. We should have free markets. We should have property rights and contracts. But we can't trust the people with their own lifestyles because they might do something dumb. Well, let me tell you, in a free society, you have the right to do dumb things. But you don't have the right to go to your neighbor through your congressman to get your personal bailout. You have to suffer the consequences of what you do. But what would really carry the day is that you would be rewarded according to your willingness to work hard. You have a right to your life. We haven't dispelled Jefferson on that, and we have a right to liberty. I don't know why it is that we don't have a right to keep all the fruits of our labor. That's what we should have. But in the revolution that's going on, I believe that it has happened significantly, especially in the young crowds and the college campuses where I go. They understand this issue of personal liberty, personal lifestyles. And the government can't tell you what to do. Your neighbors shouldn't be able to tell you what to do. And you shouldn't have theocrats running around. I'm a religious person, but I'm not a theocrat. I don't want to tell you what to do with your life. But we want to see this all in one. And I think the really good news is that You break up this dissension and the fighting. Today, they're clawing away the special interests. It's a power struggle. Both parties, all the candidates. I can run things better than this. I can do this. I can do this. Well, you know, if I'm to be your president, I want to be your president because of the things I don't want to do. I don't want to be the policeman of the world. I don't want you to have to pay for it. I don't want to run the economy because I don't know. No one individual knows how to run the economy. Only you know how to run your economy and how to spend your money. And I certainly don't know what is best for you in your lifestyle. That is your business, as long as you don't hurt other people. Now, when you understand this, economic liberty and personal liberty, international liberty, without using force to make other people do our bidding, guess what? We should bring everybody together. You might want to use your liberty for one type of religion, somebody else no religion, somebody else another religion. We understand that. Some people might want to read these books or other books or no books. We should come together and say that's the way it should be. But there's not a whole lot of faith by the politicians I know in the people making their own decisions. But it's very simple. It's not complicated. If I'm to make the decisions, or one individual's make decisions, I might make a mistake, you know. And how do I know what you want? So if a mistake is made, think of the damage done. It's national. It's everybody. If we start saying, you can't do this, you must do this, you can't drink this, you can't take vitamins, you can't have nutritional products, you have to exercise 2 hours a day, and you know, on and on and on. You're no longer a free person. And right now, we're on the verge of becoming even less free, except for the excitement on the college campuses and what's happening in this country. Nobody knows the future. Nobody knows what tomorrow will bring. I do know that the foundation of our system is very shaky. It could come down quickly, but it could be changed quickly too. And this is where I'm encouraged, because I've been talking about this for 20, 30 years, and the receptions have been very, very small. And I've given a lot of speeches on the House floor. I've never had an applause on the House floor yet. So So I have to come and visit with you to get some reassurance, and I'm so glad to hear that we have allies. But we don't know exactly what will happen, but I'm really very much of an optimist. It's not like, I think our system's going to get worse before it gets better. The Soviet system collapsed. They were foolish enough to invade Afghanistan, you know, a few other things. No, they collapsed. We didn't have to fight a war with the Soviets. But when our collapse comes, or when we have to make changes, it's not like we have to invent this all over again. You know, we have a reasonably good Constitution. It's just that we need to use it once in a while. Certainly the founders understood very clearly that freedom was one issue. Social and economic freedom were one and the same, and they advised us strongly, stay out of the entangling alliances, stay out of the internal affairs of other nations. So the system was there. We just drifted away from it. We lost our confidence. We've lost our confidence in expanding our understanding of how free markets work. Today, there is a move on. Keynesian economics is going to be old business pretty soon because it hasn't worked. I see what's happening in Washington. I see what's coming from the other candidates. I see them as the past. I see you as the future. some people get discouraged because they say, well, you're not getting 51% of the vote, 51% you have to have it, but it isn't true. What you need is an irate, tireless minority willing to start brush fires in the minds of men. And there are some days like today that I get more optimistic. Instead of a brush fire, this looks like a forest fire. It's great. I've always resented it when they say that, oh, I'm a candidate, I like what you're saying, but you're about 200 years too late. Well, you want to go back to the 19th century. But that is wrong. That is wrong. Freedom is a new idea. It's only been tried briefly at different periods of time. We've had a magnificent trial. It worked very well, and we have rejected it. When they talk about going back to the old age and the old days, that's what they're doing. They're going back to tyranny. Everything today is a movement toward tyranny and control. That is old-fashioned. It's been proven to be wrong, and we have to reject it. Ideas do have consequences, and good ideas have good consequences. Bad ideas have bad consequences. I think the ideas of liberty is a good idea, and it will have good consequence if we do our work and our efforts and participate one way or the other. People ask me constantly, what should I do? You convince me, you're right, tell me what I'm supposed to do. I said, do what you want to do. You do what you have to do. Some people, but the most important thing that we do is understand the issues. Understand why non-intervention overseas is good for us and good for them, good for everybody, good for the world, and good for the cause of peace. We need to be able to defend that. We need to understand why personal liberty means that, yes, we have to be tolerant of people even when they make their mistakes and do things that you don't approve of. And you also have to have a firm understanding and be able to defend why free markets provide greater prosperity than interventionism and socialism and welfare and inflationism. That is not the road to prosperity. There's still a fair amount of fear in this country that if you have too much freedom, that it won't work. I don't think so. I guess we'll never have a perfectly free society, but we have a shortage of freedom, and we need to substitute that fear with more freedom and understanding. I've had members of Congress sitting beside them when they're voting, and they're voting for something to take more control over your life. And I say, why are you doing that? And he literally said to me, well, the people are too dumb. The people are too stupid. And that attitude prevails on both sides of the political spectrum. You can't take care of your own personal life, and you can't take care of your own economic life. But when you see the results of what a free society can bring, and this to me is the road, the best chance we have for peace and prosperity. That should be our goal. The other personal goal that I think we should consider, and that is seeking excellence and seeking virtue in a personal way. Nobody can impose excellence on us. Nobody can impose virtue on us. But the governments are always trying to do this. They're trying to say, well, you have to do this and this and this, and then we'll become a virtuous country, even to the point of, spreading ourselves with missiles and bombs. But if the government assumes that role and assumes this role that they can protect us from ourselves, believe me, there will be no liberty. But today, this idea of liberty is alive and well and growing by leaps and bounds. So though we have great problems, I finish with a bit of optimism, because there's a large number of people, the young people of this country, have had enough of what they're seeing coming, and they want to change it. They like the ideas of liberty. They're principled. They like the Constitution. They don't like war. And there is a large segment of other people that are joining. The independents and a lot of Democrats now are looking at this and say, this makes sense. It's common sense. This will bring people together, this whole philosophy of liberty. So I am convinced that if we understand the principles of liberty, where that liberty comes from, it comes from our Creator, it doesn't come from our government. If we understand that, I am convinced that we can return to the republic of old and once again have peace and prosperity in America. Thank you very much.